The man's eyes surveyed the room as he began to speak. A life of flight is a cruel thing. I have seen numerous battles and escaped the clutches of death too many times to count. Thousands of men once followed my call, but I am now without land, army, or title. All that I have left is my quest for vengeance. Precious time passes as I speak, so I will be blunt. Doom rapidly approaches your land, and you must be ready for it. The armies of the accursed Tamerlán draw ever nearer, watering the ground with blood. This warlord is the greatest scourge ever seen in all Asia. If you will listen, I will tell you of his conquests, of the terror that he has inspired. Born into the Barlas, nomads inhabiting the Central Asian steppe, Tamerlán was bred from birth to be a warrior. He spent his youth as a mercenary in the service of the local chieftains, but soon rose to power when his father, a chieftain himself, died. At this time, Transoxiana was divided between four powers. In the west lay the White Horde and the Blue Horde, mere shadows of the former glory of the Golden Horde. In the east were the two wings of the declining Chagatai Khanate. Tamerlán set his sights on these divided rivals. He was outnumbered, but he had a plan. Toktamish, a chieftain challenging his uncle Urus for rule of the White Horde, had sent messengers to Tamerlán seeking his support. If Tamerlán could defeat Urus and install Toktamish in his place, then Tamerlán could rely on the support of a powerful ally.
The feeble lords of this steppe will tremble in fear at the sound of our thundering hooves.
Emriniz mademem. Emriniz. Hazır. Emriniz. Emriniz mademem. Hazır. Emriniz mademem.
Tamerlán, we both have no love for Urus Khan. If you will help me slay him, I will take command of the White Horde and help you conquer Transoxiana.
Sire, our scouts have identified the weaknesses of our enemies. If we strike at their soft underbelly, we will break their will to fight.
Tamerlán's raiders approach our farmland. Send forth all riders!
Hazır. Emriniz.
Let us see the Chagatai Khans field armies without food. Sow the fields with salt! This red fortress has claimed enough lives. Raise it to the ground!
Tamerlán's forces are attacking our trade routes! Stop them! Tamerlán's armies approach our lands. To arms! To arms! Our walls have repelled far mightier conquerors than you.
The Chagatai Khans will never again hold sway over the Silk Road. The frail Blue Horde is no match for our forces.
Hazır.
Turn back now, Tamerlán, and I will
Emriniz.
spare your worthless life.
Bütün külünler. Emrinizce amademem. Düşündüm.
I am slain. 1,000 curses on you, Tamerlán and Tokamesh. The White Horde follows me now. Together, Tamerlán, we will conquer all of Transoxiana.
Emriniz.
You may use our dock to fish in the Aral Sea.
I was a
Emriniz
common
diye
brigand
madem.
when I first entered these lands. Now I am a mere of all of Transoxiana.
Hazır. Hazır.
As a child, Tamerlán had been dragged into Samarkand in chains by the Mongols. Now, all of Transoxiana was his to command. The leaders of the rival hordes all flocked to him to pledge their loyalty. The wind roared, whistling through the hall. Flames flicked in the great fires burning within, the distorted shapes resembling the forms of agile warriors. The lucky few that did not submit were destroyed with fire and sword. Towers were built from their bones. Tamerlán was now a great Amir, or lord, but his thirst for conquest was far from over. Convinced that my guest knew a great deal about this Tamerlán, I asked him for more insight. I had heard that Tamerlán had been maimed by arrow wounds to his hand and leg. How could his armies accept a lame man as their leader? A fair question, he answered. It is said that Tamerlán and his fellow tribesmen agreed to decide who would lead them by a foot race. Although Tamerlán's men ran more swiftly, he cast his cap onto the stake marking their goal, and thus won the race. This man seemed cunning as a fox, a dangerous adversary for any commander. I asked my guest to continue his tale. Tamerlán gazed southwest to Persia, a land torn by strife ever since the fall of the Khanate. Persia was vast, its terrain a challenge to any ambitious conqueror. It would not be easy to take. Tamerlán, however, could count on the support of his ally Tokhtamesh, who had reunified the Golden Horde. Together, they would ride down the squabbling Persian kingdoms.
Descend upon the cities of Persia, my riders! Strike fast and hard at our enemies!
Amir, we should hasten to press our advantage. Well-directed actions can sap our enemies of their strength.
Emriniz.
We have raided more supplies for you, Tamerlán. These laborers will work for you, Tamerlán.
Emrinizce mademem. Bahraymem.
These horse archers will help you in your battles.
hundreds of human skulls to replace the fortifications of Herat.
Bagrijmen. Tushunkin. Hazır. Emriniz.
The citadel at Zaronj is no more. Sistan will pay homage to me now.
Emrinizde madem. Hazır.
Chauvinists will never again claim the lands of the Ilkhanate and the Rhone.
We have grown powerful together, Tamerlán. But only one man can rule the hordes of the steppe.
War it is then? So be it.
These laborers will work for you, Tamerlán.
Hazır. Emrinizde madem.
Eat of the mesh while you still can. My hordes will pursue you all the way to Russia.
Running
Toktamish's betrayal brought Tamerlán to a rare burst of fury. The man that he had regarded as a son, for whom he had sweated and bled, had stabbed him in the back. Tamerlán was forced to halt the Persian campaign to cope with this treachery. Thousands of battle-hardened cavalrymen ceased their pillaging and thundered northwest through the steppe to the lands of the Golden Horde and its allies in Russia. As if foreshadowing the tale to come, the snow of early spring began to fall outside. Winters lasted a long time in these parts, and even the nobles in the hall, clad in their furs, shivered. Tamerlán's vengeance was fearsome to behold, the men whispered. The blasts of wind intensified, snuffing out some of the torches within the hall. Servants bustled about, tending to the meat roasting over the fire. The scent of cooked birds, game, and mutton filled the air. This was the first time that Tamerlán's forces had ventured into Europe. The winters were harsh, and Toktamish surely hoped that the biting cold and far-flung supply lines would prove too much for the wily tactician. The armies of the Golden Horde burned crops and took all they could carry as they retreated. Toktamish knew that Tamerlán would show no mercy. Terrifying reports reached his ears of torched villages and mountains formed from the bones of the slain. Wherever Tamerlán went, it seemed that flock of carrion birds were never far behind. Entire towns surrendered upon hearing of the brutal destruction of one of their neighbors. Toktamish had no choice but to engage the rampaging forces of his enemy. The armies met near the banks of the Kondarcha River sometime during the early weeks of the summer. Crows and vultures circled about the field, an ominous foreshadowing of the carnage to come.
Deploy our reserves to hold him off!
Hazır. Derhal Bagrijmen.
forces flee helplessly before us! Now the path is open for us to strike at Toktamish's heartland in Russia.
We have gravely underestimated the power of Tamerlane's army.
Perhaps it would be wise for us to join him against Toktamish.
Agreed.
We can feed your army and supply you with riders. But we need wood to repair our ice fishing camp.
We want to attack the city of Astrakhan, but we have no siege equipment. Bring 2 siege towers to my camp, and we will join you. Tell Tamerlane that we ride with him.
Many thanks, almighty Tamerlane. We will support your army from now on.
Reinforcements have arrived through the Caucasus.
Take what we can spare to help you in your battles.
This food will feed many horsemen.
Toktamish mocks us with the construction of a monument in Astrakhan. This cannot go unchecked.
Tamerlán.
You are a man of honor, Tamerlane. We will join you against Toktamish.
Undefended targets simply beg to be plundered.
No one. This city will regret having ever opposed me. The rye burns while my men build towers from the skulls of the slain. Ha! With his empire aflame, Toktamish will have no choice but to flee like a craven to Lithuania.
Raging fires, torrents of blood, piles of ash, the clash of iron, and the screams of the dying. This was the horrors that Tamerlane visited upon the cities and people of the Golden Horde. The cities of Ryazan, Sarai, Astrakhan, Azov, and Ukek were reduced to rubble. All that remained, aside from the ruins, were the towers of bones that were built from the corpses of the dead. Those who survived were driven like sheep to march in unspeakable cold. Toktamish had no choice but to flee west to Lithuania. Tamerlane was determined not to let the traitor escape, but word soon reached him of a rebellion within his homeland. Leaving the hunt in the hands of 2 of his generals, Tamerlán swiftly returned home to restore order, at the point of a blade. Listening to the stories of the stranger had stirred our appetites, and we eagerly began to devour our meal. I invited the old man to sit next to me. I still thought that this Tamerlán was more myth than man. Surely he had been beaten in a battle at least once. The man has the cunning of a wolf and the composure of an owl. In some battles he strikes hard at the center of the enemy line, while in others, swift horsemen outflank the opposition. Then they feign a retreat to bait the enemy into a trap, a storm of arrows. When Tamerlán decided to cross the Khyber Pass into India, a different and terrifying challenge faced him. The armies of the Delhi Sultanate ruled the battlefields through their powerful elephants, monstrous beasts known to crush a horseman with a single foot. Drawing up his lines, the clever warlord waited to spring his latest trap.
Shah Tughlaq relies on the charge of his armored elephants, but he has no idea what is coming.
Now charge, my mahouts!
Send forth the flaming camels! Ha! The elephants fear my camels and stampede back towards their own lines! Press the attack!
Hazır.
Nothing now stands between us and the riches of Delhi. Let us claim them for our own.
Inspired by our piety, Ghazi troops have arrived from the west to join us.
Peşmerinler.
We have destroyed one of Delhi's castles. 4 more still stand.
Hazır.
We have destroyed the second enemy castle. 3 remain.
Tuşun ki.
3 of Delhi's castles lie in ruins. Only 2 still stand.
Emrinizge mademem.
We can use the resources that the villagers had stored here.
Bahraymen. Tuşun ki. Bahraymen. Hazır. Bahraymen.
4 of Delhi's castles have fallen. 1 more, and the city will be ours.
is ours. Its vast riches will be more than enough to finance my future conquests.
The Indian army relied on the charge of its dreaded elephants to shock their enemies and drive them into disorder. No stranger to the art of war, Tamerlán knew this. In a stroke of genius, he loaded the camels in his baggage train with straw and wood and set them aflame, whipping them toward the enemy lines. The sight terrified the elephants, who doubled back and trampled their own men. The battle was a rout. 200 years' worth of Indian treasure was loaded onto a train of wagons and carried back to Samarkand. In response to an uprising, Tamerlán's armies reduced the jewel of northern India to a charnel house. Death and fire mingled in a putrid stench that enveloped Delhi for weeks. Still, Tamerlán was not satisfied. There was unfinished business to the west. Silence gripped the court as the narrative evoked fear and awe. The meal had been finished for some time, and the fires were beginning to die low. If Tamerlán turned west, he surely would have collided with the mighty Ottoman Empire. Would he even dare to do such a thing? For some time, the local Turkoman tribes of the Levant had been requesting aid against Ottoman aggression. With his army rested and his coffers full of Indian riches, Tamerlán was ready for more bloodshed. He knew there was more than one way to motivate an army. Religious fervor and promises of land and plunder drove his men forward. This land was familiar with the terror of previous invasions, but nothing could prepare them for the onslaught that lay ahead. Thirsting for glory, Tamerlán's armies flooded across mountains, plains and rivers to terrorize Armenia, Georgia and the Levant.
The feeble states of the Levant lie at our feet. Let us show them the true meaning of fear.
Amir, this Turkoman village has offered to help supply our horde.
Tamerlán's horde has destroyed one of our trading posts.
As the air fills with smoke, local dignitaries flock to us with the false hope, trading their gold for their lives.
How can we catch fish in rain without our dogs on Lake Van?
Dismayed by the slaughter, enemy envoys hasten in vain to offer us gold in exchange for leaving their lands. Dismayed by the slaughter, enemy envoys hasten in vain to offer us gold in exchange for leaving their lands.
تیار من در حال کلگای من کرگای من
Tamerlán's armies have demolished our fortress in peace. Where will we find refuge now?
As the air fills with smoke, local dignitaries flock to us with the false hope of trading their gold for their lives.
town center to the ravaging horde. Surely the apocalypse has come. No! Now our eastern trade routes are lost.
Emriniz. Hazır. Kurallarınlar. Emriniz. Eşberinler.
Our castle guarding the eastern gate has fallen. Somebody help us.
Hazır. Kurallarınlar. Eşberinler.
The castle guarding the road south is now a pile of rubble. Will nothing stop the marauding Tamerlán?
Ha! The foolish Mongols did nothing to protect their prized city of Damascus.
No! Gorgeous mosque, the pride of our city. Please leave us in peace.
Emrinizge madem bemirim.
Cilician Armenia shall fade into obscurity.
Ashes and rubble are all we leave behind. Well, son, will ensure that my line prospers for eternity.
Tamerlán!
Tamerlane's forces ran rampant, looting and burning as they went. For a land that had only recently experienced the plague, this scourge must have seemed to signal the end of the world. Although he was known for his military campaigns, Tamerlán was also a patron of the arts. When the city was sacked, the artisans and scholars were spared and sent to his capital at Samarkand, where they created a vibrant blend of cultures. Populations who resisted him, however, were no stranger. After his siege had broken the Armenian fortress of Van, Tamerlán ordered its inhabitants hurled from the crags. Just like Hulegu, roughly a century before, Tamerlán showed particular cruelty to the city of Baghdad. Each man in Tamerlán's army was required to bring him 2 heads. The warriors slaughtered the population of the city, then slew the prisoners they had brought with them. It is said that to satisfy Tamerlán's command, some even slew their own wives. For the survivors of this savagery, it seemed as if the sun would never rise again. The relationship between Tamerlán and the Ottoman Sultan Bayezid was one of great enmity. The two of them had been exchanging scathing letters for years. Finally, Tamerlán had the opportunity to crush his rival, whose armies were weary from wars in Byzantium and Hungary. Even so, the Ottoman Empire was no trifling opponent, its army driven by intrepid leadership and the power of its janissaries. The Ottoman force marching to meet Tamerlán was large, but divided. Turks, Serbs, Tatars, and various other vassals all contributed troops to this powerful yet volatile force. If some of them could be pried away and convinced to defect, the tide would turn in Tamerlán's favor. This would be his greatest test yet. The fate of 2 empires hung in the balance.
Bayezid has made camp across the river to the south. We do not yet have the numbers to take the fight to him. So, we should focus on raiding his outlying supply stores and camps.
Our spies report that the loyalty of the auxiliary troops accompanying Bayezid is in question. We should visit their camps and see if we can pry them away from him.
Emriniz.
I am impressed by your conquest, Tamerlán, but I demand one more display of strength. Eradicate the Ottoman supply camps southwest of here, and we will gladly join you. I would help fight the Ottomans,
Selam.
but my men are inexperienced. If you bring 5 elite Keshiks to my citadel to train them, I will join you and convince the Kara Tatars to do the same.
Kurgayman.
Ha! I never doubted you for a second. Come on, men. We serve a new lord now.
We have seized Turkish weapons and armor from this blacksmith. The Turks will not be using these horses anytime soon.
Selam. Emriniz.
Without this training ground, the Turks will field fewer janissaries. The grain in these mills will feed our men now.
I hear that you have recently planted much gold, Tamerlán. If you are willing to share some, perhaps we can be convinced to break camp. Bayezid would never share his spoils with us. Let us go home, men!
Let us see Bayezid fire his cannon without this gunpowder. We have captured some Ottoman siege engineers. The Turks will not be using these horses anytime soon.
A deal is a deal, Tamerlán. We will be there for you when the time comes. We will crush your forces on these plains, Tamerlán. Prepare for battle.
Send your best, Craven. Not a one will survive. The enemy is breaking into a full rout! Ride them down into the dust!
Amir, Sultan Bayezid has fled the field and taken refuge in his mountain fortress to the south.
He may flee as far as he likes, but we will track him down as a wolf does his prey.
We thank you for weakening the Turks for us, but it really is past time you left our lands now.
Ha! I will burn your
Tamerlán.
city, just like the others.
You will try.
Kurgaiman.
A renegade has informed us that Smyrna depends on shipments from Europe for wood and gold. If we destroy the outer defenses of its harbor, the rubble will fall into the sea, causing supply ships to be dashed to pieces on the rocks.
Excellent. Execute the deceitful traitor, and prepare the attack on the harbor of Smyrna.
Emriniz. Hazır. Eşberin var.
I surrender! Just spare me your great Tamerlán! I beg you!
Emriniz. Hob emirim. Emriniz. Eşberin var. Emriniz de vadır. Hazır.
Our great stronghold lies a smoking ruin. Flee! Flee before the Tatars kill us all!
No adversary can stand his ground against me. I am a titan among mortals, a harbinger of devastation. Fire without bounds.
The Battle of Ankara was a catastrophe for the Ottomans. Never before had they suffered the disgrace of having the Sultan captured in battle. Turning his armies around, Tamerlán left Anatolia in chaos. It is only a matter of time before he seeks another victim. The man ended his tale on that foreboding note. I realized that I had to prepare my kingdom lest my lands appear ripe for the picking. I ordered everyone to retire to their quarters. We would discuss this new danger in the morning, with clear and ready minds. Suddenly, the doors burst open, and a servant rushed towards me. Sire, a messenger from the Waldrods called Tamerlán is here to speak to you. He claims that you are harboring someone of interest to him. I turned to the old man who had not heard the messenger, and asked for his name. His weary, dark eyes met mine, and he answered in a grim voice. I am Toktamish Khan, of the blood of Genghis Khan, and the rightful ruler of the Golden Horde. Landless and friendless, all I have left is my tale.